Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. This morning's briefing involves one of the subjects that most black folks don't handle very well, and that happens to be sports. But if you know about me, you know this is not about who wins and who loses, or about putting money on the big game or the big match. This is a cautionary tale of sorts, and a reminder that for some folks, the real game is what's going on behind the scenes. Floyd Mayweather's made hundreds of millions of dollars through his professional career, and he's had some pretty big fights, but apparently he's about to go into his biggest fight yet. He says that he's been shortchanged, and now he's filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Showtime. Alright, now for those of us who don't follow sports, here's the upshot. In 2013, Mayweather signed a 30-month, 6-fight deal with Showtime. At that point, that made it the richest deal that an individual athlete had gotten from the company. In fact, Mayweather fought 8 times in total on Showtime pay-per-view. He fought Roberto Guerrero, Canelo Alvarez, Marcos Maidana, he fought him 2 times, and Andre Berto. And during this time, he also fought Conor McGregor. Of course, he fought Manny Pacquiao too. That fight still stands as the highest grossing pay-per-view in history with over 4.4 million purchases and $410 million in revenue. Mayweather reportedly earned around $250 million for that fight alone. So he got $250 million more or less for a single fight. Well, can't knock the hustle. But according to Mayweather, he didn't get nearly what he was supposed to get out of that deal. The lawsuit claims hundreds of millions of dollars in misappropriated funds and damages resulting from a long-running and elaborate scheme of financial fraud, breaches of fiduciary duty, and conspiracy orchestrated by Floyd Mayweather's former manager and advisor, Al Haymon. The lawsuit also alleges this was carried out with the knowing and substantial participation of Showtime and Steven Espinoza, one of Showtime's executives at that time, among others. Espinoza was the executive who put the deal together that brought Mayweather to Showtime. In the lawsuit, Mayweather says Showtime and Espinoza worked in tandem to divert the boxer's earnings into accounts controlled by Al Haymon, and that they failed to provide financial transparency. Mayweather says this alleged chicanery has cheated him out of at least $340 million. Mayweather cites a complex web of hidden accounts, unauthorized transactions, and deliberate concealment of financial records as the reason he believes he's been defrauded from those funds. But interestingly enough, though, Al Haymon, of all people, is not named as a defendant in the complaint. He's mentioned. They're saying that he's the guy who got the money, but Mayweather's not taking legal action against Haymon personally. According to the New York Times, Mayweather's lawsuit paints Al Haymon as a highly secretive person who avoids technology and paper trails, dealing almost entirely via faxes and in-person meetings. So he avoids having any sort of documentation is what that means. The suit says that rather than taking the standard 33% cut that most boxing managers typically get, Haymon made a verbal agreement with Mayweather in 2004 to receive 10% of his earnings. Well, that's one issue right there. As the old saying goes, verbal contracts aren't worth the paper they're not printed on. During that time, Haymon allegedly set up a series of bank accounts under his own name and those of people working with him without disclosing the details to Mayweather. Haymon then began working with Espinoza to serve as a sort of financial middleman on Mayweather's behalf, the suit alleges. Instead of going to Mayweather directly, his earnings were deposited into Haymon's network of bank accounts, which he maintained with an associate named Jeff Morris. Those accounts would then transfer the money to Mayweather after deducting Haymon's cut. Given the size of the transfers, which amounted to hundreds of millions of dollars, and the unusual nature of paying a fighter through a third-party lawyer's trust account, this should have raised red flags within Showtime, the lawsuit states. On information and belief, Steven Espinoza and other Showtime executives were aware that Al Haymon was the de facto controller behind those accounts. Thus, defendants knew that by sending funds to Jeff Morris's account, they were knowingly participating in a structure that kept Mayweather from directly receiving or overseeing his own earnings. Espinoza is accused of helping Haymon to hide and redistribute this money during his time as a Showtime executive. The lawsuit alleges Espinoza was aware that the details of Mayweather's earnings and his contracts were being hidden from him. Espinoza was laid off from Showtime in 2023 as part of a corporate restructuring. But since then, he's reportedly joined Al Haymon's company, and the two have continued their business working relationship ever since. And as for Espinoza, he's not commenting on the suit at all, naturally. Mayweather's requested a jury trial, and he's seeking compensatory damages along with additional damages from each of the defendants. If he wins, he stands to collect over $680 million in damages from the lawsuit, as well as legal fees and forensic accounting analysis that he had to pay for. Even though Espinoza hasn't said anything about this suit, Showtime has, but what they've done is to point to the statute of limitations. They're suggesting that any claims related to the fights as far back as 2015 may no longer be legally actionable anyway. As for Al Haymon, he's been notoriously his secretive self. There's few people who can say that they've met him, and even fewer pictures of the man. He became legendary, though, for how much money that he made in the fight game, even though he's never thrown a single punch. This isn't the first time he's been sued by a boxer, though. Oscar De La Hoya sued him in 2015 for $300 million, accusing Haymon of violating antitrust laws and illegally acting as a manager and promoter, which violates the Muhammad Ali Act, which is supposed to outlaw that kind of thing. De La Hoya's suit was dismissed in 2017, and Haymon's lawyers are vowing to do the same with Mayweather's suit. Alright, so now you got basically the broad strokes of it. My take? I'm not disappointed that Floyd Mayweather made as much money as he has. Obviously, I don't like a lot of the stupid stuff that he said, and his out-of-the-ring antics are definitely not to be envied. But as far as his business acumen, which happens to be his brand, Floyd Money Mayweather, I do have to give grudging respect to his success. And when he thought that his money wasn't coming right, he hired forensic accountants to go look it up for him, and that's what they found. He was the reason that those pay-per-views commanded such high amounts of money to begin with. If you had put Pacquiao or Alvarez in the ring with other people, do you think they would have made as much money as they made fighting against Mayweather? He was doing his own rendition of Jack Johnson's Great White Hope. Hey, how much money do you want to pay to see if any of these non-black fighters can knock me out? And as confused as he is on a number of issues, he nonetheless understood exactly what his real business was, and that was to get as many of those white pay-per-view fans as possible angry at him and to get them to pay as much as possible in the futile hopes that somebody non-black was going to knock him out. He dangled that carrot in front of them, and he did it to the tune of over $1 billion, and truth be told, can't be mad at him. At least this wasn't like so many other instances where you got black people who do a particular job, they're working in entertainment or sports, they're promised tons of money, but at the end of the day, they have nothing to show for it. Floyd Mayweather was determined that he wouldn't wind up like that, and he didn't. And in this case, because of the fact that he was able to make sure that he got paid, he has the financial resources necessary to actually go to court and fight for whatever he believes he's owed. But that brings us to Al Haymon. The white media's had this love-hate relationship with Floyd Mayweather, mostly hate. They've taken all their little shots at him, but as for Al Haymon, it was kind of very difficult for the white media to tee him up for a defamation campaign, primarily because there's so little known about him. He is such a low-profile figure. So what they did was, they lauded and praised this guy, for the most part, for many years, but the main thing the white media talked about was how elusive he is. He is the sports world's ultimate man of mystery. And because of the fact that he's black, there's been all of these white sports figures and media reporters who have been hoping to basically find a way to show people this is who he is, this is how much he's got, this is what he's got, because that's what they're really saying. How much money does Al Haymon have? It ain't right. We know that this guy's making money hand over fist, but he's still black. And that being the case, he ain't supposed to have it. So you need to show us how much you've got so we know how to get it back from you when we take you to court. I don't know whether the accusations that Mayweather's making are necessarily true or not, but I do know that Al Haymon became the most powerful figure in boxing not by being in front of the cameras or even in the ring. If there is any validity to these claims, well, Al Haymon definitely did the most to make it difficult to prove. He didn't run around being flashy or trying to show people that he's a big shot. He stayed in the shadows. Haymon and his lawyers claim that he's done nothing but square business. De La Hoya and now Mayweather claim that he's been ripping people off. But either way, Haymon has made a ton of money off of other people's blood, sweat, and tears. But this case is now going to provide an examination of how he's been doing so. And unlike Oscar De La Hoya's suit, I don't think this one's going to wind up being dismissed. So we shall see. But the entire reason that I wanted this to be the subject of this morning's briefing is just as a reminder. At the end of the day, even if you're doing business with people, you still gotta check and make sure that they're not trying to take advantage of you. Floyd Mayweather's made a number of mistakes over the years, but when it came to keeping his eye on the bag, Mayweather's performance was as flawless as his boxing record. Even though I'm no Mayweather fan and certainly no sports fan, nonetheless, I would like to see Mayweather win his lawsuit. I wouldn't mind seeing Showtime take an L on this one, mainly because they were the company that put out that crap about Bill Cosby trying to keep all of that anti-black hysteria going, putting out big money behind that. Well, in that case, then why shouldn't they lose? And as for Al Haymon, he and Floyd Mayweather had a long working relationship. People say that they were very close. And the fact that it's come to this makes me wonder, when Floyd Mayweather began bringing up these accusations and these questions to Haymon, did Haymon go ahead and open up the books and show, hey, here's full transparency? Or did he maintain his legendary secrecy on that one too? Well, the fact that it's gone to court makes me think the latter is what happened. But it's yet another example that if you're dealing with the white media, which is exactly what Showtime is, you better make sure that you keep both eyes on them at all times. And check to make sure that the people who are supposed to be in your corner aren't actually in theirs instead. Because if you don't, then no matter how many boxing matches you win, you could be the one who winds up down for the count. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Latavius, Roz Braz, Bobby Ross, Winfield Scott, and Sa. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.